So it's been a wonderful morning, and now we're about to begin the afternoon. And it's my honor and distinct pleasure to introduce Sherry Rowlands-Weston, who has been instrumental in making a difference in this world. One of the colleagues that wasn't able to make it today because he had made a prior commitment to go to North Carolina, Kyle Pruitt, has been working with Sherry for some time on their board for Sesame Workshop. And I said, well, what should I say about Sherry? So I won't tell you everything. But one of the things that he did say was that when she makes up her mind to do something, she is determined. It's going to happen. And that's exactly what she did with regard to 100 million and change, which is quite remarkable in terms of resources that are now available for the families that have been affected by the conflict in Syria. And she may show you some pictures of some maps, but basically looking at what's happening with regard to in Syria, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and what kind of programs are actually getting started. And we also are fortunate to have Katie Murphy. Stand up, Katie. So Katie is also very involved in the research side of this. And another member of the team who is not here is Hiro Hoshikawa and Larry Aber, but they're very actively involved in the LINKS effort that we heard about earlier today from Paul. So I think without further ado, I will introduce Sherry Rowlands-Weston.
Thank you so much, Jim. I am so thrilled to be here, and I think it's just so important to be a part of this conversation, and it's perfect because it's really, promoting peace through children's media is something that's at the heart of everything we do at Sesame Street and our productions around the world. So for those of you who know Sesame Street as the domestic television show, which many people do, how many people here know Sesame Street? Okay, that's what I thought. But I think that many people do not realize Sesame Workshop is the nonprofit organization behind Sesame Street, and they often don't know the depth and breadth of our work, because Sesame Street today is over 150 countries, and we're reaching about 190 million children around the world. Our mission is to help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. And that may sound like a clever tagline, but it really is infused in everything we do. We're deeply committed to this. It's smarter with the academic basics, literacy, numeracy, stronger, health, resilience, and kinder, empathy, acceptance of differences. So if you were to think about our history over the last almost 50 years, Sesame Street turns 50 next year, we have had a long history of tackling some very difficult issues, but always through the lens of a child. And it's important to understand that many of our productions around the world are not the US version of Sesame Street. We may be seen in 150 countries, but in many of those countries we go in and we create completely local productions. They'll look like Sesame Street. They're indigenous, but they're designed to meet the needs of those children in their country, in their language, reflecting their culture, and reflecting their own realities. We've also had a long history of working in conflict settings and in post-conflict settings. And we have spent time, as many of you here know, working in Northern Ireland, as well as Israeli-Palestine territories and in the Balkans. And in those countries, our curriculum is about respect and understanding, about conflict resolution. So given the staggering number of children today who've been forced to leave their homes, to flee everything they've known, their homes, their schools, we felt at Sesame that we had to play a role, and there was a role we could play, that we could help. But we also knew that we couldn't do it alone. And we needed a partner who understood the plight of refugees as much as we understand the needs of young children. And that's what led to our incredible partnership with the International Rescue Committee. I'm so glad you introduced Katie, because she's such a key part of all of this. And we felt that by combining IRC's roots on the ground in refugee communities and Sesame's proven impact through educational content, and the fact that both organizations truly share a commitment to evidence-based education, to early childhood education, and to rigorous research. So we just knew that together we could make a meaningful difference for these children. So to start, I would love to just show you a video that will give you a sense of what we decided to undertake together.
Imagine a 5-year-old child who's now a refugee, who fled her home, has no education, no real chance of a childhood. Now consider the fact that there are 12 million others just like her. There are more displaced people around the world than at any time since the end of World War II, and more than half of them are children.
For the children, the Syrian crisis is a tragedy experience full of suffering and harm.
And we know that displaced children suffer neglect, violence, insecurity, all of which is so detrimental to their long-term future.
The failure of the international humanitarian system to address their needs in a serious way is storing up huge problems for tomorrow.
For me and for my family, I just want to be in a peace place.
Providing quality early education and strengthening relationships between kids and adults can change lives for the better. Together, Sesame Street and the International Rescue Committee are working to give millions of displaced children the support they need to learn, grow, and thrive.
So the partnership between the two will be to enhance and improve the educational programming provided to children. It's very important.
With IRC's tremendous capacity in crisis settings and our ability to create proven educational content, we believe together we can make a meaningful difference for these refugee children.
It takes that kind of unique partnership to think in new ways about how to give children the resources to withstand and come through the kind of trauma that they have suffered.
So we'll provide valuable content that is educational, but not just on literacy and numeracy, on the social and emotional skills that children need to succeed in life.
As they've done for decades all over the world, beloved and trusted Muppets lead the way, teaching lessons of resilience and coping to children who have already been through far too much. Parents can learn how to better engage with and help their kids, and by providing joy, hope, and access to early education, these children can help build a better world for all children.
Children are remarkably resilient, and if we can reach them early, we can make a huge difference in their outcomes, and they deserve that.
أماني لأطفالي مثل كل أم، يعني بحب إنه الأطفال يكونوا يعني أحسن، لهم مستقبل زاهي يعني.
Can't help but smile when you see children and Muppets. Now that video was created before we knew about MacArthur. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, MacArthur Foundation 2 years ago announced that for the first time ever, they were going to create something called 100 and Change, and they were going to give $100 million to any organization that was addressing one of the most pressing needs of our time. And we had already begun our partnership with the IRC, but we decided that this was one of the most pressing needs of our time, and that we would go together and apply for the MacArthur grant. So 1,904, was it, Katie? 1,904 applicants, and 18 months later, 18 very long months, we found out that we had been selected. And so you can imagine, and I also want to acknowledge Netta Elatar, who's in the audience. Netta, you have to stand, because she was such a part of this process at Sesame. And now Pia Brito is very lucky to have Netta working for her there. But so you can imagine how amazing it was to to win this award and to have the opportunity to literally change the world. I mean, that's how it felt and still feels. But I think we are so grateful to MacArthur not only for what this grant will allow us to do, it's literally to create the largest early childhood intervention in the history of humanitarian response, but also because they shined a light on the need to invest in early childhood development in refugee and conflict settings, and that they shined a light on the potential of what this means if we can give these children the path forward. So, as we know from Paul Connolly's impressive work, investing in high-quality early childhood development services not only improves short-term outcomes for children, for caregivers, for families, but it's a critical investment in the long term, providing them with the skills they need to rebuild their societies and contribute to a more peaceful, stable world. At Sesame, we know that media can be a powerful tool to reach young children. And for almost 50 years, we've focused on reaching children in those critical early years because we always believed that is when we could have the greatest impact. And as you know, today we have the science to prove it. As you've also heard today from Pia's excellent presentation, early childhood is when brain development is unparalleled. And children are not only primed for learning, but they're also forming their sense of self and their view of the world. So in our local productions in regions of conflict, our content is designed to model and promote peace-building skills like empathy, problem solving, the ability to appreciate similarities and differences. We break down harmful stereotypes by exposing young viewers to positive images of the other. It's what we did in Northern Ireland with Catholic children and Protestants. It's what we did in the Middle East with Israeli Muppets and Arabic Muppets, Palestinian. And with all these productions, both formative and summative research is so critical. We have to see if we're having an impact, and we base everything we do on research. And I'm so pleased to say that the research shows that these programs are linked to positive impact on how children perceive themselves and how they perceive others. For example, children who watched were more likely to take someone else's perspective, more likely to express the need for sharing, for cooperation, and for helping others, and more willing to be inclusive of those from a different background. We like to think of it as Muppet diplomacy. And since the majority of the children and the majority of the Syrian refugees in the Syrian response region are not actually in camps, but they're living in host communities. So we're able to reach those Syrian children side by side with their new neighbors in Iraq, in Jordan, in Lebanon. And through the power of, I like to say the power of media and Muppets, we'll have the opportunity to model empathy, inclusion, and acceptance of differences throughout the Syrian response region. So our initiative will include two main components. It will be both mass media and direct services. So mass media, which you think of Sesame Street, because it does allow us to reach children at scale through television, through mobile, through YouTube. And then direct services, working hand in glove with the IRC to reach children wherever they are, in their homes, in learning centers, in community centers. We'll be creating an all-new Sesame Street series in Arabic and Iraqi Kurdish. And the focus will be on the social and emotional and resiliency skills children need to flourish. We'll introduce new local characters whom children can relate to, with stories they can identify with. And by working with IRC's thousands of home visitors and facilitators, we will reach the most vulnerable children through home visits, through learning centers, through community programs, and with the IRC's trained outreach workers using Sesame's engaging educational materials. We hope to restore nurturing care and nurturing relationships between caregivers to give children the tools they need to overcome the traumas of war. We know from child development, from epigenetics, from neuroscience, you've heard a lot of it this morning, that the adversity and traumatic experiences in a child's early years can have long-term consequences to their healthy brain development. So you can imagine for refugee children who've experienced trauma, conflict, displacement, violence, neglect, that they are at severe risk of what Pia referred to as toxic stress, of impairments that will follow them literally throughout their lives, resulting in poor physical health as well as mental, as well as decreased earning opportunities. And yet there's a growing body of evidence that shows that early childhood interventions focusing on that nurturing care, including learning and play-based interventions with caregivers, can help mitigate the costly effects of trauma on children and give them the resiliency skills they need to thrive. So engaging with parents and caregivers is critical to this work, and that's one area where Sesame has a very unique advantage. You see, since its inception, Sesame Street set out to engage adults as well as children. That's why, in those early days, the founders added Muppets, celebrities, parodies, humor, music, because Joan Cooney's theory, which I think was quite prescient, even at 50 years ago, she said, I just think the learning will be deeper if a parent is watching with the child. And given what we know today about the way a child learns, about the importance of adult-child engagement, we think that we've been quite ahead of the curve for 50 years. But we also know that engagement is even more critical when a child is overcoming the effects of trauma. So what I love about our content is in all of this program, we're creating Sesame content that is literally designed to be not only a tool for the child, but a catalyst for that all-important adult-child engagement. So this would be a good time for me to show you a video of some of this work in action. This was from IRC Home Visits in Lebanon.
صباح الخير. كيفك؟ Our early childhood program begins in the home, whether it's a shelter, a tent, a crowded apartment, it doesn't matter. كيفك يا أمين؟ The most important thing is that the children need to be with their parents, the first caregivers with whom they will build trusting relationships and learn new things in order for them to be able to build knowledge on the long run. Okay. We give them activities to promote reading, learning the alphabet, counting, a lot of language skills.
تبعت الغسيل شو اسمه؟
كمان الغسيل.
Cells.
We empower the parents with skills to support their child's development. They can play with them using objects that they can find in their homes.
4 5 6 7 8.
We show them how to communicate with their children frequently in a way that promotes praise. Bravo!
Most of the parents that I work with, when we first meet, they describe their role as shelter provider, food provider, as the one who's making sure that their children survive. Yet with time, they start engaging with their children, and they would say, I used to do this in Syria, but I was not able to do it anymore with my kids. Thank you for helping me.
أصابتني عقدة نفسية حتى حنان لهلا تحسيه على طول روح أربن المدارس هنيك ما عاد نفعنا نبعتهم على المدرسة ولهلا بس بشوف ويسمع بحس ضرب أو ألعاب نارية غزايف يعني هون ما في شيء ماما هون عادي طبيعي ما عنا مو مثل بسوريا.
اليوم موعد حفلة عيد ميلادي تونتون.
نحن بنعرف إن الأطفال إجوا من بيئة مختلفة، بيئة فيها حرب، شافوا أشياء ممكن إنه خوفتهم، يعني في عندهم حالة إنه غير الأطفال العاديين اللي هن رايحين على المدرسة، فنحن لحتى نرجع لهم ثقتهم بنفسهم بدنا نحاول نحن نعمل لهم هيك كلهم، نأمن لهم المكان الآمن، نأمن لهم البيئة الآمنة لحتى هن بيشعروا بالثقة. والمدرسة مأمنت له هالشيء فهن أكيد رح تأثر بالمستقبل، رح يبنوا مجتمع، أكيد رح يكون المجتمع منيح، مجتمع فعال أكيد.
بسام عبطنتن اترك ايدها عبطنتن
So as I mentioned before, everything we do at Sesame Street is grounded in research, and this initiative is no exception. As Jim mentioned, Dr. Hiro Yoshikawa is leading our research. We're partnering with NYU Global Ties Center, and they are conducting a multi-year evidence-based research and evaluation program to measure the success of our approach. And there's actually a dearth of educational research on early education in crisis settings. So we intend to share all of our research with the entire humanitarian community, which will literally double the existing evidence base on what early education programs are most effective in crisis settings. We're currently conducting formative research in the region as well, and our teams have been on the ground in Lebanon and Jordan, meeting with educators, advisors, and local creative teams. We've learned that many of the social and emotional skills we need to provide have to do with communications, giving children a vocabulary of emotions to identify and regulate feelings like anxiety, anger, grief, and fear. For it is only once children master these early building blocks of expression that they can begin to manage some of the more complex elements. Many displaced children don't have the language or the emotional safe space to think abstractly. Consequently, they can only think of the here and now. As one of our advisors in Jordan explained it, holding up a water bottle, as an example, she explained, if a bottle can only be a bottle, how can a problem be anything but a problem? In other words, if children can't think abstractly with creative imagination, how can they imagine a better future? We also just wrapped up a 5-day writers' workshop in Beirut, and I'm excited to share a few details that we haven't released yet, so you're the first to hear. The new show will feature 2 brand new Muppets created especially for this production. One is a 6-year-old little girl, and the other is a 6-year-old little boy who has had to leave his home, who needs to live in a new neighborhood, and the two become fast friends. And as we always do with Muppets, there's also a baby goat who eats everything in sight, so you'll have the signature humor as well as characters that children can relate to, identify with, and help them feel less alone. And in addition to the new broadcast, a suite of educational materials that are being rolled out in Lebanon and Jordan. One of my favorite storybooks that we've created is an interactive book called I Have a Friend. The main character is a little boy named Sandu, who starts out as a bully, but learns the importance of being a kind friend in a story that examines the feelings from both his perspective, the bully, and the bullied. And the storyline is all about making new friends, resolving conflict, and appreciating differences, which is relevant, again, to the experiences of children from refugee communities as well as host communities. And it's filled with questions for facilitators and caregivers to ask young children about the story, how it relates to their own lives. As we reach displaced children and local children in host communities, we will model peaceful ways of resolving conflict, enabling children to take what they learn and apply it to their own daily lives. We know that children can be a catalyst for changing attitudes even with their entire family and communities. As Jim says, children as change agents, planting the seeds for societal change. And in success, this initiative will be a model that can be replicated to help transform humanitarian response, not for just these children, not just Syrian refugees, but for displaced children wherever they may be. We know that young children in crisis settings are at the most critical time in their development and therefore at the greatest risk of what Pia again referred to as toxic stress. And yet the great irony is those that are affected the most receive the least. Today, less than 3% of humanitarian aid goes to education, and only a tiny fraction of that to early education. So it's another reason we're so grateful to MacArthur. Through the 100 and Change grant, they have not only highlighted this need, but they've also highlighted the potential and the importance of investing in the youngest refugees and giving them a path forward. And MacArthur's hope was also, by example, through audacious philanthropy, that they would be a catalyst for others to step up, to follow suit, and to increase investment in early childhood development in humanitarian settings. And I am thrilled to say that others are stepping up. It's already led to funding to expand our refugee response to Bangladesh, where we've just begun a pilot with UNHCR to bring critical early learning to Rohingya children, as well as the broader community in Cox's Bazar. So I have to say, I find today so encouraging, and I am so truly grateful to the Early Childhood Peace Consortium, to Yale, to Queen's University Belfast, and of course UNICEF, for your incredible efforts have helped to raise awareness of the importance of investing in the early years to build peaceful societies. Jim, you quoted Gandhi. I love that quote. Another I love is when Gandhi said, "If we are to reach real peace, we shall have to start with children." I think all of us here know that children are our greatest hope, and if we invest in the support they need and give them the tools to thrive, we're investing in a more peaceful, stable world for all.